Hey there everyone and welcome to another Neo Monsters video. In this video we're going to be going through all the fire monsters that have come out in 2019. I recently did a video on Earth and you can find the other ones all in the description if they've come out already. This one is a lot shorter than the one on Earth because Earth got a massive revamp. I think we've got like maybe 2/3 of the monsters that came out, so anyway we're in for a shorter one. This video, like the other ones, is split into 3 sections. The first section is going to talk through the themes and subthemes of the element. That is, various archetypes which the element is built around. For example, fire is known for its poison, so that is one of the themes. Next, we're going to go through all the new monsters in the list, in the order shown. 2019 was the year where we got loads of piercing monsters. Previously, we've had like link monsters, raw monsters, that kind of thing, different archetypes being brought into the game, and this year it was a lot of piercing. So the third section is talking about where the element kind of stands now, what it's gained, that kind of stuff, after the new monsters in this last year, what it's kind of added to the element. And then also talking my personal thoughts for maybe what could be added in the future. As always, there are links in the description to get to particular points in the video if you're coming back for this for reference, or otherwise just want to break away from it because it's a little bit long. This first slide here, we're looking at all the fire legendaries and mythics. This includes the ones that have come out in 2019. They're not going to be included in the themes in a second, but they're here for this slide. We have got 14 new monsters, like I said, 3 mythics, 4 legendaries, and 7 super epics. Not a huge amount of support for fire this year, but I mean, there's been a fair amount. And what we're looking at here more than anything else is this summary table, which you may not be able to understand. So I'm going to talk through kind of how to read it and in comparison to the other elements. So fire, compared to the other elements, it's kind of an in-between element. We have some tankier elements like holy and earth, and we've got some more aggressive elements like water and storm. Fire is in between. It doesn't really have loads of anything. However, there are a few unique things about it. So one of the unique things is that there are very, very few standard defense and full defense monsters. I can't remember exactly how this compares to the more aggressive elements, but basically any tanky-like monster for fire tends to be rounded. It has more rounded than any other element. And a good example of this is Capybaragon, who is built as a tanky monster for fire. It's got high speed so that the health is low, but it's got no weakness to any killer moves, and it's got hold ground and taunt, so it's really meant to be a tanky protector, and it's got rounded stats. Normally on other elements this kind of thing may be standard defense or full defense, but it's rounded on fire. The other thing is with speed, again very spread out, nothing really because it's an in-between element. However, it is notable that while it doesn't have more fast attack, very fast monsters, it's what I'm calling anything 81% or more. It doesn't have more than some other elements, however it does have lots of 90% or more speed monsters. We've got things like Apolorexus, Astrogolem, Bavolcus, those kind of things. Quite a few monsters that can come in and make some kind of impact quickly. So like we kind of said earlier with Capybaragon being a taunter, there are no protectors in fire technically, other than the kind of standard ones that all elements have. It's definitely a theme in the element that there are no protectors. There are also very little stun. So that's kind of what fire is doing. It's doing everything, but it's missing protectors and stun. It's known kind of as the Jack of all trades but master of none element, and for that reason people haven't liked it so much. It's been kind of difficult to play Link Fire viably. I remember a long time ago I watched a video on YouTube of someone showing how fire was amazing in PvP, and basically they had a collection of legendaries, which at the time not many people had loads of legendaries, so you could run a load of fire legendaries in PvP and do well, but it doesn't really work so well as a link element, just generally because it's hard to focus the team around any one thing, and we'll see a little bit more of that as we go through this video. The first theme to talk about is poison. Because, well, fire is known for poison, had to do it first. It is definitely a theme. However, what you'll notice here is there actually aren't that many monsters. I haven't included the standard super epics or just generally the standard and weaker monsters. We've got only the limited stuff here. But there really isn't that much. In the middle we've got 2 monsters which are just poison revenge. They're not really poison monsters, they just have a little bit of poison support. And on the right we've got the legendaries. There are actually fewer legendaries than there are super epics for this. And the legendaries on the right, well, we've got Tri-Dragon, which has the 2 killer moves, and to be honest, it's more about those killer moves than it is about poison. Sure, it does support poison, and the killer moves are better because they're venom, but it's not really a massive poison monster. Then the other 2, while they do have auto poison and chance auto poison, they're fine poison monsters for sure, and Flarevern with its secret skill has now become pretty powerful. However, their moves are a bit slow. They are both 160 or more on their Poison Eater moves, which isn't that viable. So the legendaries are fine, but actually it's kind of weird that people think of fire as the poison element, and actually the legendaries are not the best poison legendaries. Looking over at the super epics though, we've got some brilliant super epic sweepers. Most notably, Volca Venus and Flutter Drake Rose, both of them have 100 seconds double Poison Eater, which is kind of crazy, and Volca Venus is Link, so that's really what's pushing Link Fire Poison, as well as Keeper Dragon has Link Poison Eater, which is only 50 seconds. It's a little bit weak for killing legendaries, but whenever you're used, there was a time a while back when PvP was super epics only, and a lot of people were running Volca Venus and Keeper Dragon because the 2 of them are brilliant super epic sweepers. So that's poison in fire. Definitely could be a little bit more for it, because it's kind of what this element's known for, and they're definitely not pushing it as hard as they could. The next thing we have is an interesting one that you might not have thought of. There is a lot of anti-sleep stuff in fire. Fire is always kind of, I was going to say parallel, more like mirrored water. Water was meant to be the sleep element, and fire the kind of anti-sleep element in a way. So on the left here we have sleep immune stuff. Now what's interesting is the difference between sleep immune and insomnia is sleep immune you can use with one-on-one. So fire is, ironically, while it's the sort of anti-sleep element maybe, it has some sleep combo stuff with one-on-one. Most notably Jacko Hotep having switch friend, so you can use that with one-on-one and then switch friend out into something else which maybe doesn't have sleep immunity, or otherwise maybe something with Purify, so you can run a team which doesn't have sleep immunity in it, but then you bring a monster in which purifies, and then suddenly they're all awake while enemies are asleep. So there's some really cool sleep combo stuff that's possible. There on the right, there's some interesting monsters for it, and maybe there'll be more which can really open up lots of combos. And then on the right we have the anti-sleep stuff. Most of those have insomnia. The super epics don't really support your team and stop the other team members from sleeping, but the legendaries do. So we've got I keep wanting to call it Astra Golem. I can't remember the name of it right now, but anyway, the Link Fire legendary that's there has Purify and Insomnia and Hold Ground. It's pretty good for stopping your team from being put to sleep. However, it does have slow speed. But Volcus, on the other hand, has very high speed and Insomnia and Purify, so that can really it comes in, wakes up your team. Brilliant support for going against sleep. And then Crimzeus doesn't have Insomnia or sleep immunity, but it does have Toxic Give Turn, which will wake up an ally and give turn to it. So that definitely helps working against it. Moving on to sub-themes, the first sub-theme to talk about is Rock sub-theme. Now this might be something that you didn't think of either, and well, Fire is interesting in the way it uses rocks. While Earth creates rocks and it uses them for throwing and maybe for shielding and healing, it's like support stuff, but limited to just shielding and healing, or damage. Fire uses it slightly more interesting way. Sure, there's stuff here which is just for healing, shielding, damage, but every single one of these monsters uses rocks in a different way. They're not all the same. So the two in the middle are the most interesting. Dolphinix using them for stunning the enemy. It's one of the few bits of stun in Fire, and having that stun grenade is very powerful. And then Astra Golem can use them to load its mortar very, very quickly and become a brilliant sweeper. So there's some definite potential here in Fire if there's a bit more rock support, a bit more reason to use it. Like, these don't really work so well together necessarily, but it would be really interesting if Fire has some stuff that rocks appear at the back of the team and then different monsters use them in different ways, so you can use them on the monsters which are going to help most, or otherwise not use them on other ones. What I want to see, which maybe I'll go into later, is how the monsters which are built around using these rocks don't necessarily need them themselves. Something like Jingle Dragon is brilliant for this, where it creates some rocks, but it doesn't necessarily need them to heal. It's kind of built around doing the Confidence Strike. It's got a secret skill as well which heals it, so it doesn't necessarily need to use those rocks. So maybe something else could use them. Similarly with Lava Main too. The last sub-theme to go through is kind of a stretch here. I mean, the others, when I pick a theme, it's something which you can build around and maybe do something powerful with. Killer moves is not really something which you want to build around necessarily, because it's reliant on what the enemy team has. However, it is very, very notable that fire has more killer moves than the other elements. You can see a lot here. They've got even Catmander, which is quite unique, having Light Bane and Dark Bane on it. But anyway, they've got killer moves for all different kinds of things, and they typically do it better than the other elements do. So that seems to be a bit of a sub-theme in fire, and kind of goes with the theme that they do a little bit of everything, and they kind of they work as a toolbox for the other elements. So killer moves can come in as a toolbox, and maybe you won't use these in a Link Fire team, but you can use them for other teams that you make. So now we're on to section 2. Let's go through all the monsters. Start off with Abyss Soldier powered here. This is one of the Abyss Soldiers, and I talked about it in the Earth video, so I'm not going to go through the passives necessarily. If this is with other Abyss Soldiers, it's going to triple its attack and become huge power. Now, what's really nice about this one is no matter whether it's with Abyss Soldiers or whether it's by itself, it always has an attack boost. So even though it's got rounded stats, it has actually higher attack than you think. However, saying that, the moves are kind of a little bit lackluster when it's by itself. A lot of these Abyss Soldiers, they want to work by themselves, really. That's what I would say is their better state. This one kind of works better with the other ones because for Power Slash, in order to do enough damage to kill things, it really needs the triple attack. But anyway, kind of on theme here with the Assassinate. Like I was saying, the killer moves are a bit of a theme in fire. Here's another Assassinate monster, and it can do a bit of interesting stuff. It's a little bit of a support for the Abyss Soldiers team. Nothing too special, but also reasonably good. The next monster to look at is Ahuizard. I think I said that right. Now this is going with the throw theme that's in the element, well, rocks theme I should say, and it's an incredibly good throw monster. This is a brilliant sweeper, and it doesn't create any rocks itself, so you need some rocks from something else, but then it throws them at 50 seconds, and once it's got a kill, it can create 3 rocks at 50 seconds. It's super fast at killing things, and it's got stun immunity, which is just almost unheard of on a super epic. The one thing that's holding this back, which holds back a lot of super epics when they have some great sweeping potential, is its speed is 54%, which is fine, but like not super high, and its defense is minimum. So it's very easy to kill this off, and for that reason, fine, it's not going to be the most incredible thing. But high speed killing, it's got Bloodcrave on it, Counter-Strike sometimes comes into play, brilliant aggressive monster that should be seen in lots of teams. Any teams that are using rocks, this comes into play very nicely. Raw Throw as well, being able to bypass protectors, it's absolutely excellent for working as a sweeper. Next monster is Blaze Rider. So this, again, a brilliant monster, slightly less exciting in terms of it doesn't do anything unique, it's not like a super powerhouse in some way, but it's just very solid. So its speed is a little bit low, it's got the low defense, similar to Ahuizard. You often see this on the great super epic sweepers. However, it creates a Goldoid next in line. Now, Goldoids are incredibly annoying to deal with. That's the one which regenerates when you kill it. It has a 75% chance of just going next in line. So creating a little Goldoid that's just going to be going there in your team, really annoying. You don't want to use this in Link Fire teams because the main thing you want to do with this monster is get a kill and then solo Blood Fury. This is not for Link Fire at all, but between Toxic Killer and Slayerbane, you can do a good job at getting kills and then doing the solo Blood Fury. Slayerbane in particular, because the attack is high on this, it can actually kill things quite reliably, and 70 seconds to charge a blood move is very solid. So, nice little sweeper for a super epic here. Good use in lots of teams. Next monster is Bundle Blazer. This is a bit of a wacky one. I'm not really going to go into huge detail about it. It's meant to be a curse for whoever owns it, and you give it to your opponent. It's got a couple of immunities, so it can't really be abused as you give it to your opponent. And generally, it's just not that amazing. You can kind of use it in one-on-one sleep combos and stuff. Ultimately, its use is best used with Harlequin, so use this a little bit before Harlequin in your team, so you create some bronze shells, and then the bronze shells mean Harlequin gets buffed and just goes nuts. But Harlequin's a mythic, so not too many people really want to be using this. It's generally just not a brilliant super epic, but if you're interested in it, do look into it, and maybe it has some use for you. The next monster is Chimeraxius. Now this, Chimeria. Chimera. I'm messing that up. Anyway, this monster is a very old monster that got revamped because it had a moveset that was like the standard ones. So they wanted to make it unique. And strangely, they didn't really make it that unique because they kind of copied the moveset of Galvbane. This is a weaker Galvbane. And fine, it's a Link Fire Galvbane. I struggled to really look at this and think of it as really powerful because it's just a weaker Galvbane and everyone gets Galvbane. But it is definitely a reasonable sweeper. Stun does not come out much in fire. It's a Link Stun Pulse. So that's alright. Going into the Time Strike, it's got high enough attack that Time Strike can kill things off quite nicely after a Stun Pulse. And then the Bloodcrave sweeping after that. Kinslayer for taking out other fire monsters. It's a fairly good sweeper, but nothing that special. Scarlet Guard is next. Scarlet Guard is much more exciting. So Scarlet Guard has the 2 killer moves, very much on theme with fire. You probably noticed through these super epics, there are a lot of them with killer moves. And Scarlet Guard here, not disappointing. Excessive Force is what makes this an absolute powerhouse. Now, Solar Blood Fury means Solar Blood Thirst means it can't be used in Link Fire so easily. However, the 2 killer moves with Excessive Force is pretty much the thing you go for. I mean, you make this +9, it's got super high speed. When it gets a turn, you can just often find a target. Both Stun Killer and Toxic Killer both have loads of targets, so it's very easy to sweep through at high speed. That 59 seconds when you got it +9 is kind of nuts. And then, if there isn't a target, after you got a couple of kills, you can do the Solo Bloodthirst. Now, sometimes this does get a little bit stuck because if there isn't a target, it can't do that much. It's a little bit less flexible than you see on Legendaries, but that's because it's a super epic. It's an incredible super epic sweeper, and should be in lots of teams that are top tier. We see it around a lot. The last super epic to go through is Thug Becky. This is one of the better Thugs for the main reason of the Thulubai passive. So if this gets thieved by another Thug, or otherwise just killed, then by a Thug, that is, by an enemy Thug, it still triggers, is what I mean. Then the enemies get put to sleep for 240 seconds. Now that is 100% sleep chance. It goes on enemies which have camouflage or stealth. It's incredibly annoying and almost feels a bit overpowered. But the Thugs in general, this is pretty much their powerhouse Feast Revenge type thing. And it's their main way for taking control. Maybe use the one-on-one first, and then you start doing some stuff, and then when some new enemies come in, that's when you feast this. The Thulubai puts those enemies to sleep, and you just carry on the sweeping and generally trade up, so that the Thugs, even though they've been sacrificing each other, they've killed off lots of enemies. So that's the main use of this particular Thug, is just for being feasted. The Time Strike, though, because it is a piercing Time Strike, that is very, very powerful. It will kill off lots of things. If you have Delegazar, you know what I mean. It is very good for killing things off. Repulse as well can come in quite a bit of use. So good all-round Thug. Has to be used with the other Thugs. It's not going to be any good otherwise, but that's how the Thugs are. Now we're on to the Legendaries. There are only 4 of these to go through. First off is Capybaragon. Now this is, like I said earlier in this video, it is Fire's protector. They don't have any protector, but they do have this basically better than a protector because it's got Taunt, which means that it turns into an auto-protect. So it's not 100% protect chance, but it doesn't make it weak to Protector Killer. So because it's not weak to Protector Killer, in fact it's not weak to anything, any of the killer moves, this is surprisingly hard to kill. Between its rounded stats and the whole ground, it is quite annoying to deal with. And then on top of that, the main unique thing that Capybaragon has is the high speed knockback random. Knockback random is a powerful move, and when it's on 82% speed monster, that means have this in your front line and you have a huge amount of control of the battle. What's a little bit annoying with the secret skill is that it doesn't line up perfectly if you want to do Taunt or Dual Slayerbane. If you've potted this monster at all, then their moves are its moves is slightly below 100, which means 100 seconds haven't passed by the time it gets another turn. The secret skill is a lot more powerful than it looks, because often killing a particular monster, just outright killing it, comes into play a lot. There's a lot of shielding going on in PvP right now, and has been for this last year, which is one of the reasons why we have lots of piercing. And so being able to just instantly kill a monster is brilliant, and if you taunted already with this, then it's going to be doing... doesn't matter that it's used a 200-second move. Now in reality, how you want to use this usually is you knock back random with the first move it gets. By the time it gets another turn, 100 seconds have passed, so you can swallow something, and between that just generally knocking something back and then the following turn instantly removing an enemy. That is surprising. It's surprising how powerful that is just for controlling the battle, having one monster which is going to reliably do those things while being a bit tanky on the field and hard to get rid of. However, it comes into play sometimes that you want to taunt, and then it's an irritation that way, and otherwise Dual Slayerbane, not the most powerful because it hasn't got high attack, but it's surprising how much that comes up for killing things off, and if Capybaragon is protecting, then yeah, it really is irritating when everything's going on. So if it can be healed, it's definitely really, really good, because it's one of those monsters that can create a bit of a wall for the opponent. So there's that kind of stuff which can go on with it. A lot going on, and that's why it's brilliant for PvP. In PvE, this kind of monster doesn't work so well because the Dual Slayerbane's weak, knockback random, not so vital, and the taunt just means it's kind of going to get killed off quickly. So yeah, not so great there. The next monster to talk about is Millicent. Now, if you look at the tier list here, it is bottom tier for both general and PvP. Why do I not like this monster? Well, it's because of the low attack and low speed. This is just... It's really annoying to face in PvE when you meet this. However, it's not the greatest monster to use itself. So, Double Poison Eater does not really kill anything if there's only one enemy poisoned. So you need to be using this in a poison team, because the Poison Gambit only poisons one enemy. And then the knockback kind of comes into play fine, but it's not the most exciting thing to be doing. Like, maybe if it was like a double knockback or something, then it would be exciting. LM healing, not really the most exciting either. Assisted Blaze, not the most exciting because it hasn't got high attack. So this is, it's a weird monster because when it comes in, when it uses a move, it then sacrifices itself and then puts itself next in line. It doesn't put itself right into the battle. It brings in the next monster and puts itself next in line. Now this is really cool by design and is powerful in that you never have a monster on the field that has used a high seconds move that doesn't get a turn for a while. So it means it makes moves like Double Poison Eater very powerful because you can use that without the downside of the 200 seconds. Now if it doesn't connect with any attack, so this gets countered by stealth for example, if it doesn't connect with an attack then it doesn't get put next in line. So you've got to be very careful about that. But basically this is a cool poison support monster that can do a bit of sweeping itself, and with that interest control going on, it can be very annoying to deal with and do some cool stuff, but Link Fire needs to be really, or just generally, you need to be using this in a very solid poison team already, and there it's probably not that great as another poison monster for your team. So I've rated it low because I think it's just way too awkward to use and not that good, but it definitely has its place in some places, and maybe I'll be asking them to buff the attack on this maybe, just to make that Double Poison Eater a little bit better for killing stuff off. The next monster to talk through is Poison Moth. So this was Fire's moth. Every element got a moth, and they're all on theme with what that element wants to do, which for Fire is poison. So this is one of the better moths for sure. When it comes in, if you manage to turn it into the moth, so you have to go through the Poo first, which is a slow monster, very tanky, and it's shielded as well. And then you pass 100 seconds on that, and then you can transform into this moth. If you don't transform, if it gets killed before it transforms, then it turns into the 5-star version, which is the same except it's a super epic and it doesn't have the passives. Now, the Poison Moth super epic version is one of the few super epics that actually is pretty good. The Poison Mask is not so good on it, however it does have the dual Poison Touch and Double Poison Eater with 130 seconds, so Double Poison Eater is damaging enough for super epics to kill if both the enemies are poisoned, and having that set up and then fast killing, it's actually surprisingly good as a sweeper. If you're using this in a team which has poison as well, it could be set up from other monsters so it doesn't need to do the dual Poison Touch. Now Poison Moth, if you have it as the legendary, is exceptionally powerful. It comes in, poisons the entire field, and then the attack on it is not quite high enough to Poison Massacre and kill the whole enemy team necessarily. It kills weaker monsters but not the tankier ones. But the Double Poison Eater is only 130 seconds, so it can keep sweeping very quickly, and with its immunity to stun, poison and sleep, it's pretty damn good as a sweeper. The paper bear in general are not that viable, so it's very much held back by that. But this is a good poison sweeper that can probably get used in some teams, certainly in the weaker teams or newer players. They can make use of this and enjoy it a lot. The next monster to talk about is White Titan. This is quite a cool monster. So it's got 90% speed and retreat, which has absolutely huge potential in the front line for entrance control. If you're wondering why the screenshot looks a bit different, it's a lower quality and stuff, I had to get this from someone else. Thanks very much to the person who gave this to me. I can't remember who you are right now, sorry. But anyway, this has some huge potential in entrance control on the front line, retreating it. And then it's got two quite powerful passives, the Dreamy Entrance and Giving Turn to the highest seconds monster when it enters. Unfortunately, compared to the other Titan, that Giving Turn move when it enters can be abused by the opponent in PvP. It's the weaker of the two because someone on the opponent can use a high seconds move to kill something and bring this into the battle, and then get a turn back on that monster which they just used. So it's not so good there, but you can build around this. One of the ways which you can build around this, which is quite interesting, is with the Mythic. I can't remember its name right this minute, but it's the one which has the Charging and Plasma Blast. And it has this secret skill which you really, really want to use that has 200 seconds on it. So it's 168 when it's Awakened Mythic, and obviously it would be because that's when you get the secret skill. So use this 68 seconds move, and then anytime it gets a turn, it can use Plasma Blast, which piercing kills 2 enemies. So if you have that in the front line, you have entrance control, you can use the Eternal Energy Core, you can then use the entrance control, bring White Titan in, and it's highly likely that your Mythic is the highest second monster, so it can instantly get a turn, instantly do the Plasma Blast. And that's quite a powerful combo. So White Titan can make those kind of combos work. And otherwise, it works quite well as a sweeper. It's got very low health and defense, and no passives that are defensive. So it's more like a super epic sweeper. However, it is very notable. It comes in, Dreamy Entrance, gets a turn very quickly, and then it can Dream Hunt at 50 seconds, and then follow up with an 80-second Bloodgrave. So it's definitely got power there as a sweeper. Pretty solid, and some combo potential too. It's just, unfortunately, because of the potential abuse in PvP, it's not the most powerful monster, and it's definitely held back by some of those things. Now we're moving on to Mythics. First up, we've got Dragulus. This is awesome. Sticking with the theme of killer moves, this has Protector Killer and Sleep Killer. This is basically a mythic version of Scarlet Guard, and what makes it particularly unique is its Fatal Revenge. So Fatal Revenge is the one unique passive on this. Every mythic has something that's unique about it, and Fatal Revenge is this one. So we're never going to get another passive that is Death Revenge but pierces. So this trades very, very nicely. The excessive force means its damage is just enormous. After one kill with either Protector Killer or Sleep Killer, you can Bloodthirst and kill pretty much any legendary. It's not totally reliable. The ones with more health, they don't always die, but obviously anything Earth will die, and then anything with like the lower health will definitely die. So this has huge sweeping potential, and the swift knockback at 75%. We said earlier on with Cappy Barragan, 82% knockback random. Very nice. This is very slightly slower, but it's a 70-second move, and it's brilliant if there isn't a protector or sleep target for your killer moves. You've still got something which is very powerful, which is the knockback. So, excellent sweeper, works very well. I was down on it when it came out because I'm not a huge fan on the Twin Killers, but it turns out, no, this is brilliant, because even if you don't have a target for those moves, you can often do great damage to two things, and that Bloodthirst in particular is very strong. The next mythic is probably the most exciting monster that we're looking through today, Novum Domina. Now, I said at the beginning of this video that there isn't really a huge reason to go with Link Fire. There's a few things to build around, but there's not a whole lot. Novum Domina really opens up stuff. So this is a huge, huge powerhouse for Link Fire teams. It absolutely has to be used in a Link Fire team. All its moves can only target fire monsters other than the double counter strike, because obviously that targets enemies. But yeah, this is a stun converter with a fast give turn move, and the really, really important thing to note here is the secret skill is the most overpowered, well, I say the most overpowered thing, the strong, very, very strong thing about it. Because it's only 30 seconds and it speeds up itself and all the teammates by 25%. Now bear in mind that when you have a mythic awakened, it's got the +9 bonus. And then when you do the 25% off that give turn move, I think it's 64 seconds or something like that. It's so insane having a 64-second give turn move. And bear in mind, this is actually quite a tanky monster too. It's got the rounded, which is what fire calls tanky. 64-second give turn move is pretty insane. And then you put this with any sweeper, and that sweeper actually effectively becomes a stun converter sweeper because this monster itself has stun converter. So if you use this sweeper, say it's a double sweeping monster, you can kill 2 monsters, some stun comes in, this gets a turn, and then it can give turn to that sweeper again, and it can then kill 2 more. That kind of thing. This is brilliant for making fire teams work very well with sweeping, and otherwise it can shield them or heal them, and those seconds cost look quite high, but again, when you sped it up, or when it's +9 and you use the NM Accelerate, it is very, very fast. Double Counter Strike 2 really helps when fire comes up against water, because obviously that's a huge counter to link fire teams, and that Double Counter Strike just does insane damage. Also means that it often comes up, there's like 1 water enemy in the enemy team, and you can use that and target something else and do two kills like that. So a lot going on with this monster, and I didn't even mention how it is a high speed give turn. This is the fastest give turn in the game, 61% speed, which is pretty awesome. The next and last monster to talk about is Wydre. Now, I don't know if I pronounced that correctly. This is the Welsh dragon. If you know the Welsh flag, there's a red dragon on it, and this is the red dragon from that. So what does it do? Well, this was really hyped up before release because it's got Roaring Entrance and Payback Revenge, which is just an insane combination of passives. It's also got enormous defense, enormous health, and piercing attacks. However, the attack is very, very low. So actually, while it's got Roaring Entrance, in fact, what you want to do is you want to use Adrenaline to power up its attack before it really does anything. That accelerates it and doubles the attack, so gets it going. However, that means effectively it is a lot slower than it says, because you've got to pass 59 seconds in order to do that. It also means if you haven't got this awakened, it is quite bad. It's not that great. But anyway, what it does do is it can double Toxic Killer with the defang there, and Piercing Blow, which Piercing Blow looks like it would be slow, but because you've got the monster +9 and you accelerate it with the Adrenaline, it's actually surprisingly fast. It's got the really nice sweeping there. Healing, very necessary because the Piercing Blow gets the recoil, which also is a bit of a downside because you've got the massive defense, but then actually you're recoiling, so you're losing health, and so it's a bit easier to kill than you think. What really makes this awesome in general, I think, is the piercing killing that comes at like quite rapid speed, and then you always have this out after you've got a couple of kills with the tyrannical ruling to just annihilate the whole enemy team. Often when I see people use this, they will go with the killing moves and stuff, and then I will kind of ignore it and think like, right, I can deal with that piercing killing. That's not the end of the world. And then it uses tyrannical ruling, and I go, oh yeah, whoops, completely forgot about that, and that's just annihilated my whole team. So great sweeping potential here. Fire, a great monster for fire, and that's the last one for today. Now we move to our final section of this video, which is talking about where fire stands now that it's gained these monsters from 2019, and maybe where it could possibly be improved looking forwards. So these monsters here are the ones which have been added in 2019 and where they fit into the themes which I detailed at the beginning of this video. You can see in the top left we have Poison, and as I said on these two monsters, I'm not super impressed with these Poison monsters. The Moth is held back by the Poopiper. Just moths in general are never going to be quite top tier. They're fine, they're quite strong, but they've got to go through that Poopiper, and that just holds them back. The Mulasem, I was very down on this. I may be a little harsh on this. Maybe it does need a buff. I'm not entirely sure. To be honest, nobody's really been too keen to try it out. It's kind of like a weird combo monster that doesn't really work as a combo and all that kind of stuff. Anyway, basically, I think that works if you've already got a strong poison team, but it doesn't make a poison team strong. And maybe in poison we need something that makes it strong. Looking at sleep immunity and anti-sleep, we've got a couple of monsters. Bundle Blazer being a little bit wacky, but it does have sleep immunity, so maybe there's some combo potential there. And then Dragulus with a sleep killer that's a very effective sleep killer. It's unfortunately a little bit slower than one-on-one, so it can't counter that, but it does have sleep killer and otherwise a brilliant sweeper, so that's solid anti-sleep stuff going on there. In the rocks, we only got one, and it's not using rocks in an interesting way, but I love it anyway because it is an incredibly powerful sweeper, and it uses rocks kind of in the way that I hoped, because it doesn't create a rock itself when it enters. So in terms of the fire theme, when I was kind of getting at that, is that I want them to be maybe making rocks for their own, like not necessarily for their own purposes, but like for each other. So they make them and then they each have interesting ways to use them. Now, Ahuizard just uses it for damage. However, it then charges up an incredibly powerful sweeper because it can sweep so quickly and with stun immunity. So Ahuizard, on the theme with the rocks, I think it is a great addition. And then you can see here the killer move sub-theme. There are 5 more. It's not really a theme, an archetype or whatever you can build around to do the battles effectively, because it depends on what the enemies have. But it definitely seems to be a bit of a trend in Fire that they get a lot of killer moves on their monsters. Now, we did get one new theme this year, I believe, which is, when I say theme, it's kind of like the same idea with the killer moves, in that it's not kind of the traditional type of theme, it's sweeping. So this is built around Novum Domina, the main reason being with that give turn and the stun converter. It's a very fast give turn, but she also just speeds up everything. So if you've got some really good sweepers, then you can sweep through the enemy team really easily, and if there's any stun, it doesn't matter because she gets the turn, she can give turn to the other monsters. I talked, when I was talking about Novum Domina, about having a double sweeper, and I can't remember the name of it right now. I'm not really sure exactly. The monster in the middle of the screen, which is the poison monster, it's got double poison eater, and the main problem with that is it's a 200-second double poison eater. Sure, it's got accelerate team, but you don't really want to waste time on that, and Novum Domina can speed it up too, but the main thing there is that he can double sweep, and then even if he gets stunned or whatever, she can give turn to him and double sweep again. Same thing can be done with Infernocorn at the bottom. In fact, Infernocorn is brilliant because it can do double piercing sweeping, and it's also got stun converter itself. So if you get stunned, then they both get a turn. If Infernocorn's health is low, it doesn't matter because you can use Link Blood Bite, because let's face it, if you're using Infernocorn and Novum Domina, you've got Link Fire going on. So you can use the Link Blood Bite to heal up, Novum Domina can give turn, do the double piercing blow, killing 2 monsters again, and then maybe another stun, and just keep going like crazy. So there's huge sweeping power in Fire now, revolving around Novum Domina. You can put in all these different fire monsters which can sweep well, and kill the enemies like that, when it's not really built around any particular archetype, just basically raw power sweeping. We also got Fire's first protector in the Taunt monster, which is a brilliant protector. So now this is great for when you're doing a Link Fire team and you want to have some kind of protector in there, but you don't want to use something that's off element because you want to use another off element monster, and you can only have one off element monster out at any one time if you want to use the link moves. So Capybaragon is brilliant for that, and otherwise just a very, very good monster too. So where does Fire stand with all this kind of new stuff? Well, we've got Novum Domina tying all together, like I said. There's still a lot of situational attacks that are basically causing problems for trying to use Fire effectively. It makes them a really good toolbox for when you want those killer moves. You can use a fire monster. A particular one for that is Scarlet, which it helps that it's got solo Bloodthirst too. But I use Scarlet in lots of teams, and lots of people will use it as a standalone fire monster that just is there to take out a number of things. There are some powerful Link moves, like the Link Blood Bites, both Infernocorn and another one which I can't remember the name of, but it's on the previous screen. They both have Link Blood Bite. We have the Link Double Poison Eater that's on Volca Venus, that's only 100 seconds. There's some powerful Link stuff going on that kind of pushes certain things, but mainly just sweeping there. But anyway, there's some powerful Link stuff. You also got a few ways to control, with a little bit of stun, a little bit of sleep, mainly the one-on-one combos there. However, I would say, Fire in general, in order for it to work well, you need to have some kind of one-on-one combo going. You need to be meeting the stuff which your team counters, if you're using those killer monsters and that kind of stuff, or you need to go all in on something. So going all in on poison, or having the really good sweepers and putting them together. It's not an easy element to play well, and I think ultimately it just has some good stuff that you take out and you use in other teams. So we see this a lot with Infernicorn and Magmarinus. They get used in PvP as standalone. They often get used right next to each other too, but they're not even used in Link Fire, which is weird because Infernicorn has Link Bloodbite. You would have thought that it would want to be used in Link Fire, but there's just not the other stuff there to support them in quite the same way. I mean, Nevum Domina does, but it is a mythic, so not so many people have it. So anyway, that's kind of how I feel Fire stands. And looking at what it needs, I would personally choose to really push the themes that are there and make them unique in their own way. So I've touched on Poison a few times and said I'm not super impressed by the various legendaries that are Poison. They just don't have a standout one that really makes, say, Link Fire Poison work well, or just generally Poison work well. I think Fire needs a bit more power in Poison, especially because it's seen as the Poison element. I would like to see that, and more of a push towards Link Fire rather than just Poison in general. For the rocks, I've touched on this a few points, trying to make them very interesting in the way they use their rocks, and just try to make them from random places maybe, in order to then like put it on a monster which is a Link monster, and then it just creates rocks which maybe it has some way to use them that's like a bit situational or something, and then, you know, have that kind of stuff going on there, so then the rocks are available for the other monsters in Fire. I think there's definitely some potential there, and that could also lead to some interesting crossover between Fire and Earth as they each create their rocks, but then Fire can use them in interesting ways while Earth uses them for, say, just, you know, throw and damage. I also think should be another archetype for Fire, because as we saw when I came to the themes, they didn't really have very strong themes. There was the, you know, killer moves theme. I mean, I think that it should have its own unique theme that isn't in other stuff. Rocks are in Earth, Poison is in Shadow, and, you know, it's around. So they should have their own unique one, and I think the best one for that would be Energy. We have a few standalone energy monsters in the game, and Fire seems to have the most in Dear Dragon and Burns a lot. So it would be cool to have Energy there. Energy is kind of like Mortar in that you have to do the charging first, and then you can do the burst and use it up, but then you have to charge again. Except the unique thing about it is you can charge multiple times, and you also have energy charge being pretty fast at only 50 seconds on at least one monster, I think maybe two. So it'd be cool to see what they could do with energy, just to make it you know, something quite interesting. We've got Razor Ray in Water, which has an interesting way of using energy where you I'm trying to think now. Is it when you... No, it's where you stun the enemies. It's not when you speed up the enemies. When you speed up the enemies is the one in Storm. And, you know, they've done some interesting stuff, but I think actually turning it into an archetype which is in Fire would be pretty cool to see. They also need some kind of control potential. We have a little bit of stun, a little bit of sleep. There's the one-on-one combos and stuff. But I think, to be honest, it would be cool if maybe this new archetype of energy could be a bit more of a control strategy, perhaps. And rocks, they have their interesting uses, and I think they should really go with that interesting uses a bit more in order to maybe add some control elements to Fire. Poison has never really been a control type archetype, so I don't think that shouldn't have it. It should be from the other themes in Fire. And then also maybe expanding on the one-on-one or sleep stuff, sleep combo stuff going on with perhaps a fast sleep roulette that could be on some kind of monster to be combined with sleep immunity, as I say here. So that's the stuff which I think would make Fire very exciting, and perhaps push towards a Link Fire setup that isn't revolved around certain monsters quite so much, like just sweeping bow. But anyway, that's it for this video. I hope you've enjoyed it. I hope you're interested in watching the other ones. You can find links to the other ones in the description. And otherwise, have a good day.